Hey, what's good, self-direct investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan, and today we're coming at you with This Week in Cannabis News from September 11th to the 17th. Now, before we jump in, if you enjoy this video or you learn something, please just leave a like on it as it really helps out my channel. And of course, if you want to learn how to take advantage of this generational investment opportunity, subscribe below so that you don't miss any future videos. There's going to be plenty of content for you to go back, rewatch, and educate yourself with. Try to think of it as a time capsule. I've tried to put all the news and facts in one place so that you can watch episodes over time to learn about the evolution of the industry, identify top US MSOs that you keep seeing pop up that you think will be worth more in the future than they are now, and take advantage whenever you feel ready if you wish to do so, because this is going to happen whether we like it or not. A ton of wealth is going to be created, so you might as well learn how to take advantage so that you can make some money for yourself, your family, and your community. But with that, Carl Quintanilla with one tweet to pretty much recap how the last 2 weeks since that announcement on August 30th has fared out for all of us. When the edibles finally kick in, we've waited a long time for this, but seems like it's a safe bet to say that we are on our way back up after a very long downturn. And so with that, the big news that we got to end off this week from NBC News First, Julie Sirkin. As we scooped last night, the Senate Banking Committee officially notices the markup to consider the SAFE Banking Bill for September 27th. So we now have a date on the in-person markup for the SAFE Banking Act, and this is from the first source, Julie, NBC News. So thank you, Julie Sirkin, for this one. Then we got a second source, Brendan Pedersen from the Vault. Senate banking on track for cannabis, but notice the different verbiage here. The markup is tentatively scheduled for September 27th. So of course this could change, but at least a second source confirming the date, we're told, though the date might shift as we near the end of the month. Of course, the timing was first reported by NBC News, but very promising that they're kind of leading with this, especially down the week, and they're not hiding away from saying that they want to take up safe banking finally, which is great. And so the third source, of course, Marijuana Moment, likely coming from the others, but confirming September 27th as of right now is the date. So keep in mind this can change. So of course, we'll keep you updated if this date were to change for whatever reason, because it's not like we haven't seen that before in the past. But nonetheless, I think this is a massive precedent. And for whatever reason, there's a lot of chatter on Twitter of people thinking that the Safe Banking Act doesn't matter anymore because rescheduling to Schedule 3 will address a lot of the same issues, such as removing 280E, which is of course true, but you got to think of the Safe Banking Act as one tool within a much larger strategy, you'd have to think, right? And if I've learned anything, just try to think of it as political theater. Act 1 might have been the first announcement. Act 2 might be the Safe Banking Act, really to just try and raise more awareness to this sort of issue. Act 3 could be the DEA responding, and then Act 4, Act 5 could be further catalysts that we see in the future. I'm just thinking out loud though, but do let me know in the comments whether you think safe matters anymore or, this is just a bonus and it's going to help build up the momentum, because that's sort of where I'm leaning. But with that, just to show you in a visual form, Sabatino, thank you for this. This was yesterday. This is today. This video will be published tomorrow. And then we've got 8 business days essentially until this markup is supposed to happen in person. And so all these links also that I've featured, I've shown you clips, but all the links will be featured in the comments if you want to go follow them or check them out. But with that, some sales data to recap how this is a state-led growth story and the federal laws are not stopping it, as Missouri brings in $119 million in cannabis sales in August. And so this is as of September 11th on Monday. Monthly sales breakdown. In August, legal cannabis sales dipped, falling 3.41% from the prior month to $119 million for the first time in Missouri, down from $123.20 million in July. But the fact that they still surpassed $100 million in a month, still very impressive. This marks the lowest monthly sales total since February when rec sales first launched. And so total monthly sales, rec cannabis sales accounted for $97 million, while med did $22. Despite a sales sag last month, Missouri's growth post-adult use has been historic, with cumulative yearly sales reaching $871.6 million through August. And remember, that started in February, not January. And so hella impressive. Good to see that out of Missouri. More on growing sales if you wanted to pause to read for the details. With that, out of Colorado, thank you, Todd, for sharing this one. And we often forget about Colorado as cannabis has already been normalized there for so long. It's the most mature market in the country. And unfortunately, it's going to be a while till we ever see it hit the levels of 2021 because of all that free stimulus money and, record sales there. But nonetheless, retailers sold $137.3 million worth of legal cannabis products in July. And just wanted to take you deeper into, at least the blueprint. That was Colorado, the first state to do it, because if we look at since 2014 to date when they started, $14.8 billion since starting. And just think every state, could be heading in this direction. The fact many are taking their sweet ass time to do it is unbelievable. But again, when we highlight 2020 and 2021, two anomaly years, mostly because of just the free handouts in money being given out, it's going to take some time to get us back up to that. However, I think one thing to look out for is if we can at least see 2023 sales rebound and surpass 2022 sales, that's going to be something promising, especially as Colorado has added online sales recently. That was a bill signed by the governor that I believe went into effect. So not only can they do, retail sales, but also e-commerce. That should help. And so let this be your biggest reminder of what the American ideals of free market capitalism and providing as much equal access to opportunity as possible can do. Because when you end cannabis prohibition, because it's the right thing to do, so you can provide legal jobs and legal tax revenue to the people in your state and offset the black market by doing so, in 10 years, you can bring in close to $15 billion of revenue. And this is a population of less than 6 million people. So come on. Tell me you don't see the potential of all the other states. Obviously, Missouri and Maryland are crushing it, going to be the next Colorado, but there's just so much untapped potential as the state-led growth story chugs along. But with that, from Marijuana Moment, New Mexico sets cannabis sales record with 48 million in purchases in August. And so, worth sharing, the New Mexico Regulation and Licensing Department Cannabis Reporting Portal shows 34.7 million in rec cannabis sales and 13.5 from medicinal last month for a total of 48.2 million. As those numbers come from over 1 million cannabis transactions at the state's 1,021 licensed retailers. And so you love to see New Mexico not having the same problems that New Jersey and New York are having because they open enough legal outlets to properly supply the demand and try to offset the black market. And when you consider that they've got over 1,000 licensed retailers, and this is New Mexico, and sales continue to keep going up, seems like even more stores could be added over time as they smoothen things out. And all told, patients and adult use consumers have made almost 724 million in combined medical and rec cannabis purchases since each program launched. And so you love to see that success. More here, otherwise full link in the comments if you want to go through that. While from MJ Biz Daily, August cannabis sales reached 24.9 million in Connecticut and 21.6 million in Maine. So love to report this as rec and med combined in Connecticut for 24.9 million worth of products, up 5.4% from a year ago, according to the state's Health and Human Services Department. Again, two states that are much more of a bottleneck than even what we're seeing in New Mexico, most likely, hence why they're just growing much more slowly. While in dollar terms, adult use transactions accounted for about 56% of cannabis sales in Connecticut during the month. And so more details here about Connecticut if you'd like to read. While Maine launched adult use sales in October of 2021, and Maine's rec sales in August hit more than 21.6 million, which is up 3.6% from July, and so very small growth, but still up, according to the state's Office of Cannabis Policy. So from two smaller states like Connecticut and Maine, obviously not going to grow as quickly with a much smaller population, but one option they have is probably to open more legal outlets if they want to drive more legal sales. And so full link in the comments, but the big news out of MJ Biz Daily, or at least out of the East Coast, it's official. New York will open adult use cannabis retail to multi-state operators as regulators' hands have been forced by the recent lawsuits. You'll love to see it. And so they voted to allow the state's medical operators to apply for adult use retail licenses, as they should have all along. And that means the multi-state operators who years ago snapped up a majority of the state's 10 registered organization permits will enter what observers say could be the largest market on the East Coast. Going to compete with Florida big time. But with that, under the resolutions of the Office of Cannabis Management approved Tuesday, regulators will accept applications seeking a retail or micro-business license from October 4th through December 23rd. So regulators will also accept applications from registered organizations during a still unspecified window to be set by the office, of course, to be determined. That action was approved in a separate resolution. And so they're calling this a pivotal day. Of course, the vote finalizing a May proposal by the OCM means litigation aimed at opening licensing to all applicants might be moot. The lawsuit was brought by some of the same MSOs who sued the state in March of this year under the name Coalition for Access to Safe and Regulated Cannabis, so that, we could have some legal cannabis in the market as opposed to all the illicit cannabis being sold out of the 1,500 stores then, now apparently 8,000. But the state's social equity applicants and licensees are feeling abandoned and betrayed. Yes, they should be, and it's not because of the MSOs. It's all because of the employees of the state that have done everything to work against them. Many of them are still waiting to open their doors after bureaucratic delays and separate litigation encumbered the state's ambitious conditional adult use retail dispensary CAURD program. At least they admit that. The vote came a week after the CEOs of 4 multi-state operators implored New York Governor Kathy Hochul to allow them to enter the state's adult use market without delay. So keep putting the pressure on, boys. We'd love to see it. Small businesses unhappy. obviously, but again, you can't blame the MSOs for that. You can only blame the incompetent Marxist running New York. And then a bit more down here, lawsuits are still in play as well. So things can change, but that is the update we have for now. Full link in the comments if you want to go through that. Well, this one's from connoisseurs.io, a bit of a summary that I just wanted to share because it relays sort of the most important points. But according to Boris in a Spaces, which we'll get to in a moment, Boris mentioned wholesale will be allowable to the MSOs and one retail location in December. However, I believe they have to pay a fee one time of $10 million for a retail location, which likely won't be worth it if there's 8,000 illicit stores around you operating, selling at half the cost because they can. And possibly 2 more locations next year for existing ROs and MSOs. And so looking at this, it doesn't even seem that appealing for them, but still a big step legally in the right direction, and hopefully we'll get more promising developments as time moves along. And so with that, Do the Right Thing shares this, and again, this is a summary from the Spaces that Boris did that we're going to get to, so take these all with a grain of salt, but this is Boris at least providing his best insights based on what he knows, and he's been wrong in the past, so take these with a grain of salt, but he would know better than us. And we appreciate him sharing. As Curaleaf Executive Chairman Boris Jordan on Spaces said this as of September 12th, or at least when the Spaces was the 13th. Mind you, this was the morning the recording was available to play, and this recording happened on the 12th, so it seems relevant. And so anyways, this is Do the Right Thing, summarizing what Boris said in that Spaces about the Safe Banking Act, and this is before we got the news that came on Friday. So Curaleaf Executive Chairman Boris Jordan on Spaces says this, take it with a grain of salt again, but SAFE will get marked up by October 6th, and we're seeing the date is now September 27th, and so that gives us some leeway from September 27th if that date changes to the 6th. SAFE will get a Senate vote in mid-October. SAFE will pass the Senate with 14 plus Republican votes, and SAFE could get added to end of the year must-pass bills after it passes the Senate. So take that with a grain of salt. According to Boris, more down here if you just wanted to pause to read what other people had to say about this, possibly jumping to conclusions, but at the same time, it is in line with the news that we got by the end of the week. And so we'll see what happens, but thank you, Toby Cannabis, for hosting Boris. Much thanks to him for sharing his insights on potential federal reform and Curaleaf's growth opportunities. A replay is available for anyone interested. That link is in the comments. So again, take everything with a grain of salt, plan accordingly for your own situation, but stuff is happening quick, so you definitely want to make some moves, I would imagine. But with that, some studies before we get into the rest of the details. From Tom Engel, his new study finds that the number of young adults being forced into drug treatment for cannabis by the criminal justice system declined significantly more rapidly, that's a lot of words to essentially say reduce, following legalization. And so fascinating data here. And so more on the study, as rates of criminal legal referrals for treatment has gone down, likely due to falling cannabis-related arrests among people 18 to 24 years old. And so this was done in a new study out of Temple University. However, among adolescents, those 12 to 17, the researchers found that the trajectory of decline in the proportion of criminal justice referrals did not change significantly following rec legalization. So this doesn't necessarily change as much because they're not using cannabis as much, while older individuals, the rate is going down. And so that's very promising. Well, there's a lot more here if you wanted to pause to read. You can do that, and then I'll bring you down a little further. Otherwise, I wasn't planning to spend too much time on this article, as it was just a more recent study I found I could add in. But all that detail is there. Otherwise, full link in the description if you wanted to go through that. Well, we got this one from Mark Landers, a great resource on Twitter for anything medicinal cannabis, especially finding new up-to-date studies that I can share with you all. As this one from September 6, 2023, health-related quality of life in patients accessing medicinal cannabis in Australia. The Quest initiative results of a 3-month follow-up observational study. And so keep in mind, it is more of a survey, and while this one cuts off some of the results, I went and found the study just to see what the feedback was, and of the 2,762 consenting participants, 2,327 completed baseline and at least one follow-up questionnaire. And so the most commonly treated conditions were chronic pain, 68.7%, insomnia, 22.9%, generalized anxiety at 21.5%, and mixed anxiety and depression at 11%. And there was clinically meaningful reduction of pain for those with chronic pain, significant improvements for those with moderate to extremely severe anxiety and depression, and apparently no changes in sleep disturbance. And so, of course, you can read it and weep. Very promising, though, as they're asking people who've chosen to take cannabis instead, and they're just finding, hey, for whatever reason, it works for me, so I want to keep using it. More reason to outright deschedule, not just move to Schedule 3, of course, but that's the first study. Well, we got this one from Mark Landers, and this is one that I want to share. It's an older one, but big, because this is the main reason we want to deschedule cannabis right away and start researching this on humans right away, as analysis of anti-cancer and anti-inflammatory properties of 25 high-THC cannabis extracts pretty fascinating when, the results here speak for themselves. We used HCC 1806 squamous cell carcinoma and demonstrated various degrees of efficiency of the tested extracts from 66% to 92% of growth inhibition of cancer cells. And I'm pretty sure inhibition means the prevention. And so anything that's going to prevent the growth of cancer cells, how the fuck is a compound that can do that still stuck in the Schedule 1 classification? Right? We all know why, but this is why it's high time to get it out. This is that study. Just wanted to bring it up to you if any of you wanted to look into it a little deeper. Full link in the comments, but fascinating, isn't it? And so with that from Jesse Redmond, wanted to share this one from Viridian Capital Advisors. As he shared, we believe there's still significantly more upside in cannabis MSO multiples. Investors who fear that they may have missed the move should reflect on historical multiples and discounted cash flow analysis, both of which will reveal significant incremental upside potential to be realized. I 100% agree with this. The full report is available here. I'll put this link in the comments. Great perspective from Viridian. But when you consider the all-time peak in 2021, these MSOs were trading at the highest multiples ever. But it's worth noting that most of the MSOs were making almost half the revenue that they're making now. They had half of the dispensaries open, or, they didn't have as many open then as they do now, yet they were trading at the highest multiples ever then. And, if you were to get into them in August at the low before the announcement, that would have been the best time to start buying in and getting these undervalued companies at the best possible book price, right? The idea is buying low and then selling high. It's very hard to buy low when there's blood on the streets and everyone is terrified and the sentiment is so bad. Anyone that's been watching for the last 2 months has witnessed that, though, in real time. But just to consider, all-time peak, February 19th, 2021, they were trading at just under 25x multiples. Safe Act 3, this would have been July 7th, 2021, trading at under 20x multiples. Schumer and Booker, when Booker said he'll lay himself down, July 9th, 2021, they'd come down from there to there. Safe Act 5, this was February 11th, 2022, down to 10x multiples. Safe Act Attempt 7, 11/25/2022, down to 10x multiples before the rescheduling announcement. This was, I think, our lowest point, 8/25/2023, and then now we're back up. And so, again, I'm not trying to call the bottom, but you can look at these visuals and it will give you a bit of an idea of where we've been and where we plan to go in the future. And so just some comments if anyone was curious. With that, from the Dales report and update, as TerraSend and Jason Wild continues to buy and increase the confidence for investors. There's another insider stock purchase from MSOs version of the Pied Piper, Jason G. Wild. 100K block yesterday purchased, now 275,000 purchased in total since word of SECBACAR rescheduling recommendation broke on August 30th. And so obviously anyone invested in TerraSend would love to see this. The executive chairman putting his money where his mouth is and continuing to buy shares at this price would put confidence in anybody that if they own shares at this price or lower, there's reason to believe they're going to be worth a lot more in the future. And I do like seeing this, although I don't even own TerraSend myself. Obviously, I wish I would have gotten sooner if possible. I did send another 2,000 on Friday, which is going to arrive in my TFSA on Monday. I'm still not sure what I'm going to buy with that. I'm going to wait and see what happens next week. But all that to say is I'm sure anyone that owns TerraSend loves to see this, and it does make me want to consider purchasing them next week. And so love to see that out of Jason Wild. Very reassuring for confidence for investors. And with that, from Business Wire, Cresco Labs opens 33rd Florida Sunnyvale and Jacksonville 70th store nationwide. I do believe this was covered last week in the Florida recap, but all that to say is just a little bit more. Today's opening brings Cresco Labs store count to 33 dispensaries in Florida and 70 locations nationally. So more here if you want to pause to read, but definitely smart for them, especially to game plan ahead of the hopefully 2024 ballot in Florida happening, and then that adult use market being a rocket ship in the future. And then last one out of MSOs from Green Market Report, Trulieve files racketeering lawsuit against former employees, vendors in Arizona. And so this was unexpected. Hey, I'm sure Kim Rivers did not see this, or this was conveniently hidden when she was looking under the hood of Harvest Health and Recreation when she was planning to buy them. But according to this article from September 11th from John Schroyer, the company says the commercial bribery scheme started in 2020 or 2021. So Trulieve got more than they bargained for, as they filed a civil racketeering lawsuit against 2 of its former purchasing managers in Arizona, as well as 5 other Arizona cannabis businesses, alleging they engaged in kickback schemes that gave the brands access to valuable shelf space at the company's 21 Arizona cannabis shops. And so 2 former employees, Randall Uberekin and Daniel Herchak, began a commercial bribery plot as much as 3 years ago, according to the lawsuit, which was filed August 24th in Maricopa County Court. And so very early on in this, of course, we'll keep you updated more here, especially if you're a Trulieve shareholder. You'll want to probably check this out a little bit more. But I invite you to pause to read otherwise. Full link in the comments, as this is very interesting. Probably took a lot of time to uncover, but, hopefully we'll see something come out of this, as I'm sure Kim has a case. Otherwise, she wouldn't have filed a lawsuit, being the former lawyer herself. And so with that, from connoisseurs.io, this is a great just write-up on where we sit today. Cannabis industry catalyst, at least from now until the end of the year. And so, folks, while I will read these out because he's added a touch of humor, which I'm sure we can all appreciate, if we miss anything that you deemed that could be a catalyst from now until the end of 2023, please let us know in the comments. But October 2023, safe banking gazillionth try to pass by mummy-looking dinosaur fossil-like creatures on the brink of extinction called U.S. establishment politicians. November to December 2023, DEA conveniently finds HHS recommendation letter that it never received. That's been sitting in that desk the whole time. I wonder if it's going to be Jason Wild's source that ends up being right all along, but somehow turned up after a FOIA request and agrees with the rescheduling recommendation, barring any donations or job offers to staffers from Big Pharma from now until then, which might stop it. Fair point. November 2023, adult use ballot initiative in Ohio, assuming Republican fossils don't find a way around blocking it through the legislature or SAM or prohibitionist idiots, but I imagine that they won't at this point. While December 2023, New York MSOs enter the legal adult use market after paying a legal $10 million extortion fee, because whether it's legal or not, that is what it is. It's extortion to the state's incompetent Marxist cannabis commission. So, wouldn't be the same without all of these struggles. I do love the cannabis space too. I hope you've all, loved it and come to love it at least. That's probably why you return to these videos. But hey, it's an opportunity, it's real, and it's going to happen. And if the last 2 weeks have been any sort of consolation, I just hope you got in before September, if anything, and was able to build some sort of a position until then. Again, this is not advice, just my opinion. And so with that, from Don Murphy, another fun fact, we'll add that on top of this ridiculous news we got this past week, as Senator James Lankford and many other idiot senators that are basically saying, hey, we don't want to be reelected, signed onto a letter that was saying that the recommendation to remove cannabis from the DEA's list of dangerous Schedule I drugs is not based in science or on science. It's based on an irresponsible pro-pot agenda. No, what these idiots don't realize is that they're exposing how dumb they are themselves, that they don't follow science, they follow political science. And so, fun fact, thank you, Don, for chiming in at least, that of the nearly 20 House GOP doctors and nurses, 0 signed on to this dumb HHS letter to basically try and backtrack any of the progress we've made. And if you look at a lot of these names, come from a lot of, backward states. Anyways, it wasn't really worth sharing, but appreciate that fun fact from Don Murphy to add on to that. And this is just another way of looking at that same sort of information. While it was, of course, Marijuana Moment that broke the story, MJ Stock Trader, we appreciate you for putting this perspective out there, because there are 222 GOP House members and 14 signed on to the letter. So 6% of them felt the need to oppose rescheduling cannabis in a letter. 94% didn't sign their name to the letter. That's the real headline. And so, of course, how Marijuana Moment wants to go with this to try and drive clicks makes me lose more and more respect for them every single week. But thank you, MJ Stock Trader, for showing this perspective, because that is definitely a clearer way of looking at the reality of this situation and how this letter shouldn't have any sort of an impact whatsoever. And so with that, out of New York, some state news again, as Christopher Norman, thank you for sharing this. New Jersey dispensary count is picking up, which we do love to see, much faster than New York. Now at 62 dispensaries with 47 adult use and 15 medical. I do believe I featured this story last week, and this might be the updated version of it, or at least the 6 stores that were approved last week may have, gone a bit closer to opening. I'm not exactly sure, but anyways, link in the comments. While also this was mentioned last week, but we got a bit more detail, at least, from a credible source, MJ Biz Daily, as New Jersey is poised to finally legalize most cannabis edibles, but not much new information from what I shared last week. Main thing is that New Jersey's legalized adult use launched in 2020, but the state is an outlier among legal markets in limiting edible products like to syrups, pills, tablets, capsules, and chewables, according to the newspaper. So, under the regulator's proposal, cannabis operators in the state would be allowed to produce baked goods, butters, drinks, and other infused products. But keep in mind, the proposal can't be approved until December. And so, hopefully then we can update you, and that is when they will be able to start approving some new products. But unfortunately, edibles will still be limited to 10 milligrams of THC per serving, with the THC in drinks capped at 5 milligrams. What's the fucking point then? you might as well increase this before you even try and approve this by the end of December. But hey, I guess you got to start somewhere. Love to see that out of New Jersey. While from the Office of Medical Cannabis Use this past week out of Florida, we look at new dispensaries that were approved from the week of September 11th to the 15th, and we see one new dispensary for Trulieve was approved and opened in Pace, Florida. Well, if we look at their qualified patient count, we can see Florida increased their qualified patient count to 847,249, which represents a week-over-week increase from last week of 1,101 patients. So at least it's over the 1,000 mark. Not as much as it used to be in past years where we've gotten up to over 2,000, but still better to see at least over 1,000 than not. While we look at the active dispensaries in Florida from this past week, September 8th to the 14th, we can see all the MSOs in the state. We can see the number of active dispensary locations they have. And we can see for this past week, the number of milligrams of THC sold, the number of milligrams of CBD sold, and the number in ounces of smokable flower sold. And so love to see strong sales across the board. But with that, an easy resource. Thank you, Connoisseurs.io, for making this easy, providing a visual for us as he shares the Florida OMMU weekly update, the market share comp sheet. And so we can see who is leading in flower, who's leading in THC, who's leading in CBD, with a bit more of the details down here. And so, you know what, I don't even need to use this source anymore, really, if he puts all this in here. But nonetheless, I will. And so with that, just a visual that we can use to take in that same info. Total flower sales in ounces by company this past week. Of course, Trulieve leading the way. Total THC sales in milligrams by company this past week. Total CBD sales in milligrams by companies this past week. And then total dispensary locations by company. And so the rest of the state news, though, for Marijuana Moment, smell of cannabis alone does not justify vehicle search. Minnesota Supreme Court rules, which is a huge win for those in Minnesota, but at the same time, it's a big precedent in the fight of freedom versus government control, as odor of cannabis should be considered along with all other evidence and the totality of any other circumstances, the majority opinion says, before the judge can make any sort of determination. Love that. More yay for freedom and an end to discrimination. Got this update out of Alabama, as not only Verano, but now a second medical cannabis applicant is suing another incompetent cannabis commission for defamation over allegedly incorrect evaluations. How do we make the public sector more competent? How do we switch the incentives? Got to figure that one out. Now, the lawsuit coming from Medela LLC asks a judge to issue an injunction preventing the commission from continuing to make defamatory statements against Medela LLC and ask for damages. And so, some details here. The WBRC obtained a copy of the evaluations given to commissioners that shows 7 applicants, with the A indicating a criminal conviction history for the applicant, including 3 in the lucrative and highly competitive integrated licensing strategy. And so what I get out of this is that, at least in this column here, pass-fail items noted, if there was an A, it indicates a criminal conviction history for the applicant. But hey, in terms of social equity, we don't mind that. We want to give as much access to people, especially those who used to be criminals, right? But for whatever reason, so this is what I guess is qualifies the pass-fail summary key and what determines if the applicant gets an A in that column. But get this, but multiple license holders given what they now consider a scarlet letter in that column say that designation is inaccurate and that none of their potential owners have felony criminal convictions. And so there's no reason that there should be an A in that column. And then so last Monday, the AMCC updated its website with a new version of the evaluations that scrubs the letter A from all but one of the applicants previously given the designation. And so the applicant that wasn't scrubbed is the company below Medela, which is called RX Connection LLC. And so all that to say, and please correct me if I'm wrong, if you do know in the comments better than I do, but I don't believe Medela LLC did win one of the conditional licenses just because they're way at the bottom of this list. They'd have a better chance if they improve their scores, obviously, but I believe they're suing probably not because they didn't get picked, but they don't want to be miscategorized or misrepresented in front of their cannabis commission as a company run by leadership that has criminal records when they don't. Obviously, if this happened to you or anyone else, you'd probably feel the same way. And so I wish them luck with this lawsuit, although I do not know all of the details, so please let me know in the comments whether you know a bit more. There's a lot here, a lot of boring jargon to read through, but that is the update out of Alabama. Well, we got one out of Georgia from Connoisseurs.io, so thank you for this. As the Georgia Board of Pharmacy was set to meet on September 13th, 2023. Now, I apologize as I do not have an update for you as of right now. Hopefully I'll have one for next week, or I can find a link from now until tomorrow and post that in the comments. But looking at the agenda, it appears they'll be discussing cannabis sales for pharmacies, and I don't know the situation about lawsuits in Georgia, as that, similar to Alabama, was the issue apparently, holding everything back. back. But Trulieve and Botanical Sciences are to appear at 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. And I believe these two are the largest operators that would benefit if this news is positive. So of course, we'll keep you updated as we learn more. But lastly, some resources to share with you for some insights and perspective if you'd like before we head off. And so this one from the Dales Report, I have not listened to it yet, but I do plan to listen to it later today. It was great to sit down with someone we have wanted on the program for a while now, Charles Bachtel, CEO of Cresco Labs, to talk the current state of the market and direction for Cresco. And so a bit more insight in the comments down here, as some people are more optimistic on Cresco, given the sort of silence and the fall through of that deal with Columbia Care. Unfortunately, I still think they're going to be fine in the long run, as I do believe a rising tide will lift all ships. But with that, from Jesse Redman, he hosted a cannabis investing roundtable discussion with Toby Cannabis and Canna Investments on Wednesday that passed. Set the reminder, this is the recording, so from September 13th, if you're interested in tuning in, this is one I do want to listen to. I will try to listen to later today after the Cresco one, if I get the chance. But, some perspective on how people responded to this spaces. Well, this one from March 2 Millions. Must watch the Dales Report interview with a lawyer, Eric Berlin, who is the leader of the U.S. and global cannabis teams at Denton's, the world's largest law firm, and very insightful commentary from a legal perspective. I have not listened to this one either, but I did want to listen to it. Whether I end up fully listening to it is another story based on how boring the jargon might be, but just wanted to share this for anyone that might be interested, because rescheduling facts you need to know with Eric Berlin. It's going to be a lot more focused on the rescheduling and review announcement as opposed to safe banking, but just some insight if you're interested. And then lastly, with that, from Marijuana Moment, as Latin American countries are trying again, what was that? Mexico, Colombia said they were going to do it. They never did it. And so we'll believe it when we see it, but all that to say, as apparently 19 Latin American and Caribbean countries have reached a new consensus or agreement to finally rethink the failed war on drugs, or failed war on people that don't agree with America's outdated laws, saying it's not achieving expected results. Yeah, no shit. And why they haven't backed out of this years ago? Because the current status quo really only benefits the U.S. government, agencies like the CIA and the FBI, and then these Latin American and Caribbean governments, and then organized crime within these Latin American and Caribbean countries. Like, you cannot make this shit up. At what point are the people in Latin American countries benefiting from the current drug laws, right? Nil, I can imagine. And so, no doubt, it'd be beneficial for everyone in Latin America to start waking up and shaking the governments. And so best of luck to these Latin American and Caribbean countries, where we hope the majority have realized that the status quo has never been serving them. And hopefully this move is to try and right the past wrongs, as opposed to trying to push any more retarded social equity agendas that just furthers the discrimination. And so we'll update you in the future, but these are the 17 countries that are signing on, and much like countries in Europe, are deciding to want to take on that outdated 1961 single drug convention from the UN that serves no purpose, ought to be abolished. And hey, hopefully this will help increase the momentum that we've got with the European countries, and make this reality of getting rid of that stupid 1961 convention a possibility sooner than later. But that is it for today's episode, folks. I want to thank you so much for tuning in, and I really hope you got some value out of it. What did you think of the stories mentioned? Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions, and I'd be happy to address them. But besides that, if you enjoyed this video or you learned something, please just leave a like on it. Subscribe below if you don't want to miss any future videos, and I will catch you next week for This Week in Cannabis News. Have a great weekend, everybody. Till next time.